while you can still see Judy and I, if you haven't had an opportunity to get a catalog, an exhibition catalog, they're up front. This catalog has a lot of images in it, almost all the images that are in the show. They also document where we got the information from, whether it was the Gill Room or the Salem archives. That's documented, and it begins in Schuylerville and goes all the way up towards Granville, following the Battenkill River. So if you haven't gotten one of these, they're really fun. Easy reading, great pictures, and captions. It's like before bed.
Okay. Say bathroom, but when do you get that?
No, not a bathroom.
Okay.
You can leave it in the bathroom.
But you could.
Yeah, but we don't want you to. All right. So anyway, welcome everyone. Does Wendy want to welcome everybody? Wendy, the director of the museum. Wendy Bordwell is the director of the Georgi Museum.
Oh,
say hello.
thank you for coming on out today. Appreciate all of your interest and support, and if you want to carry on with your interest and support at the Georgi, we always are looking for volunteers, folks that want to get involved and bring their unique knowledge to the table, so please stay in touch if you want to engage further with the Georgi. We will have open dates for this exhibit going on through December 7th on Thursdays and Saturdays, so please bring a friend if you want to come back out and check out what's going on out here and share what we have in our own backyard here in Shushan. And I want to give my special thanks to Judy and Elizabeth, as well as Butch Gilchrist and Mary Sommer for putting in a whole lot of extra effort getting today up and running, and I appreciate all of you coming out to join us and be a part of it all. Thank you. So I'm going to start, and this exhibit actually started out as Mills on the Kill, and it was just about the Battenkill River. And it was a smaller show that Judy, it was actually Judy's brainchild. And we did that first, and then it got legs. And other places. Yes.
Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I used to be a cheerleader. There's a reason for that. Anyway, so it took us, so we expanded the exhibit. We wanted to do more about industry in Washington County. And so I can tell you that it took us 2 years, really, of research and putting it together, putting the book together, framing it, blowing up, having the photographs enlarged, photographs, and contacting a lot of people in Washington County to get this kind of information available that is digestible and readable and fun. So that's how we got here.
That's how we
right?
got here. And we learned a lot ourselves along the way. It was really a learning experience for Elizabeth and I, and it will be for you too, I'm sure. We still see a lot of the mills that are left on the Battenkill, but there's really only about 3 that are operating at this point. And we found at one time in the late 1800s there were over 100 mills just on the Battenkill alone. That didn't include the Medowee River and the Indian River, which we included later on in the show. But
and mills morphed. They started out as grist mills and sawmills, because that's what the early settlers needed. They were building houses and they had to eat. So they started out as that, and then they would morph into other kinds of mills. I think that the Rexley mill has changed several times. They used to
6
cut
or
marble.
7
Yeah,
times.
used to cut marble. Marble would come down from Dorset and Rutland, Vermont, and they would cut the marble. They would deliver it on the train tracks, and then it became a scie mill. There's a scie back there. There's a machete back there if you want to see one.
one time it was a knitting mill.
A knitting mill, and then finally it ended up, its last incarnation was as a pottery for hippies, quote unquote, who lived there and made some really great pottery, and then it burned. So it's now a shell on the river that is owned by the Battenkill Conservancy, and they hope that they can reestablish that as a park and upgrade it where people can go and look at that again today. So now we're going to start. Mills on the Kill. Nope, Glory Days. Glory Days. Next. All right, so this is a picture that you don't often see the side of this. This is the Blandy, used to be the Blandy paper mill, now it's Hollingsworth and Bose. And this is the back side. Here's the dam.
Route 29 runs up
Back there.
behind.
behind.
So you're in the river looking back at the plant.
Yeah. Actually, my 5th grade's grandfather sold land to Daniel Anthony, so this would be Anthony's father, over here, in the hopes that he would be, my great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather wanted to buy this mill and wanted Anthony to like run it for him because the crash of 1837 had happened and he kind of got, well, the mill in what became Biotech, what was Phoenix Mill,
And
went
that's
out
in
of business.
Battenville.
That's in Battenville, went out of business, and so down here somewhere, that house still stood until maybe 20 years ago.
It's where those aerating
Ponds
pits
are,
are.
the pits, slush pits, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So this is still in operation.
Very much so.
Okay, next. This is, they made maps back in the 1866. That company was...
Stone and Stewart.
Mhm. And this isn't the only map they made. We have a nice lithograph of Granville, Middle Granville in the other room.
But what this one you can see here are there were 3 dams in Union Village, which is now Greenwich. There was a dam called the Upper Dam, Continental Dam, which is still there. You can see that from Route 29, which is about here. There was a dam below the island, about here. And then there's a lower dam, which is where the Dunbarton was. So right within the village of Greenwich, there were 3 dams on the river.
Greenwich was loaded with mills. I mean, there was mills constantly throughout, I mean, all over the Battenkill River at one time. Greenwich was a really prosperous place.
At one time, there were 6 fiber mills alone, just 6 fiber mills in the village of Greenwich, operating all at the same time.
Wow.
All right, this is another Hollingsworth and Bose mill seen from the Schuylerville side. And, whoops, go back. And, whoops, wrong direction. There we go. This bridge is being rebuilt now. You see the sign that says 113 detour, that's being rebuilt. Tell them about the pulp mill dam.
I think that's the next picture. Mr. Blandy, who started the pulp mill at Clark's Mills, which we think that might be Mr. Blandy there in the fancy top coat and hat, built a tunnel through the pulp mill dam so that his workers could safely cross from the trolley tracks to the other side of the river where the mill actually operated. And rather than go all the way into Schuylerville and then have to come all the way back, he built this tunnel through the dam so his workers could safely walk through.
Is that tunnel still there?
I believe it is.
We heard that, yes, the tunnel's still there. I don't know if you can go all the way through, though.
They closed
They closed it?
it. Boarded up, but yeah, we still,
You'll see where it was.
Okay, yeah.
I've been through.
You've been through it.
All right, who said that? Good. What was it like?
Dark and dirty.
I wouldn't go in. I'd be
hang-
afraid of snakes or something.
You wouldn't want to hang out there.
Hang out
That's where the tunnel was,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
So it was quite an ingenious device, really. So safety for his workers to get across and also so that it would save them time to get to work. They didn't have to go all the way around and come back.
Okay, next.
That was because the trolley came down on the other side.
On the other side.
Right.
And then crossed over and Schuylerville.
And this is the electric,
This is the hydro
Generator.
plant. Mhm. This is in Middle Falls, and up here would be Route 29.
and this is still in operation.
Yes, it is. Well, not exactly in
Not like
format,
that, but
But
it's
at that
still
Falls,
operating.
there is a hydro plant still there.
And this is above the Deonondahowa Falls.
Right, okay.
This is Tim and Company in Mill Hollow.
Mhm. These were ladies who were very highly skilled seamstresses making men's white shirts. And you can see they too, very fancy. They go to work with their white high collar shirts on and their hair all done up in the Gibson girl style. And these were the sewing machines all the way down through on both sides, sewing machines. And this was in Mill Hollow at the Continental Dam, which would have been the first dam. And I think there's a picture later on, you'll see of the outside of the building.
which burned.
Where is that?
Didn't
Where
this
is
burn?
Mill Hollow?
Mill Hollow is, if you're in Greenwich and you go down to Main Street and you start to make that sharp turn to go
Towards
across the
Cambridge?
bridge, if you went straight ahead and down into the hollow,
That's
that's
Mill
where
Hollow.
Mill Hollow is. And that would be
Yeah.
the second dam, that's the center
Yeah.
dam.
Yeah. Didn't that burn?
Yes.
That burned, yeah, a lot of mills burned, actually. They did a lot with candles back then.
Candles, well, and they needed the fires too.
And the fires too, yeah, so
Keep
a
the
lot of
power
these places burned.
Done.
Dunbarton. Dunbarton was quite extensive, you'd never know it today. The Dunbarton was in Greenwich, around in the area where the
The old Station
old
Inn.
Station Inn. You know where that
You might know where that is.
is? That's where the Dunbarton was.
Down and back.
And a lot of people came over from Ireland to work in this mill because they knew about,
Flax.
Flax.
They knew about flax.
and they knew about cotton, and they knew how all of that worked. The town was kind of built up in part around the Dunbarton Mill for people to have places to live. And women and men worked in the Dunbarton, and the first daycare center, I don't know if it was the first one in existence or in this country, but it was certainly the first one in this area, was built in 1915 so that they could leave their children there and both parents could go to work.
This is the
Because
end
they-
of Bleecker Street.
Yeah, the end of Bleecker Street.
There was a house there,
Yeah.
built specifically for this purpose.
Yep. Here's some of it also,
Dunbarton transformed
Yeah.
over the years. It was in existence for over 75 years.
but it became the
having-
Golden Fleece.
And then it became the Golden Fleece, which was a paper mill. But until the 1950s, it ran as a linen factory, and then it was reconverted to paper production. And this was one of its transformations as the Golden Fleece.
This is the
No.
no,
It's not, this is the Greenwich
knitting
knitting
mill,
mill.
I'm sorry,
And this,
forgive me, knitting mill right there.
This would have
Sorry.
been, let me try to get your bearings here. This is that island that's in the middle of the river that you can see from Route 29. This is down the end of Rock Street, would be behind these buildings, if you know Greenwich at all. The Continental Dam would be right over here. So the power to this knitting factory would be the Continental Dam, which is.
Are there
down the
any
river.
ruins of that still?
There's nothing there.
Mhm.
No, there's nothing there.
Here is a picture of Greenwich.
There's the boot
Oh,
and
wait,
shoe
is that like
factory.
a park now where that
Yes.
knitting mill was?
Yes,
It's been there,
that's
yes,
right.
I know
Yes.
exactly.
Mhm.
Yep.
And that's the boot and shoe
The boot
factory,
and
which
shoe
is still
company.
there today.
Except we have another picture of it that you can see. And this was what the square looked like. There was a big
This was
White
the
Swan
hotel,
Hotel.
White Swan Hotel, where Elizabeth and I used to, there it is.
Yeah, there
That's how
it
you
is.
see it today.
That's what it looks like today. Here, back up, Bart, so they see it. There it was. All right. And here it is today. And it's an apartment building today. Okay. But it had a lot of different businesses in it over the years besides just boot and shoes. They had other smaller businesses in there. I think Dennis was in there.
Right.
And
And a lot of different shops.
a lot of different shops were in there over the years.
But originally, it had been built as a boot and shoe factory.
Yeah.
That's the Timmon Company.
Yeah.
Those ladies in their fancy
Right.
hairdos. And this is down.
How would you like to go across that railroad track? Whoa!
This had me confused for quite a while because I
Yeah.
couldn't figure out how the railroad track was running this way
Yeah.
and then Eddy Street was running that way. Well, it turns out that the railroad has been turned around. The railroad now runs this way in Greenwich. I think you can still see these, I don't know what they're called.
Pilings?
Pilings.
Yeah, don't the kids jump off
Are
those?
still in the river, but the track has been moved. It no longer runs in this direction, it runs this way. Uh-oh.
Eddy Plow Company, as many did, this one burned. What I find interesting is it looks like there's two men standing there.
There's a hose, I think.
There's a hose, but are they in charge of that? I'm not sure.
But the Eddy Plow was a very successful business for over 75 years.
And it
that
didn't just,
too was
produced plows, it produced a lot of other things too.
Yes, they produced stone boats, they produced threshing machines. At one time, they produced bicycles. So they kept very abreast of what was their clientele's needs, and they would retool and recreate these new machines and kept them going for many, many years. So really, for 75 years, they were in good production. And this was down in Mill Hollow, and if you go to Greenwich, you'll see the building up on the street 372. It says Eddie Plow Works across the front. That was their showroom. That was all across the front. That's where they had their showrooms there, and their corporate offices were there. And then some of the finishing rooms were down on the bottom floor. But that's the only building left of that whole enterprise.
The American Tea Tray Company was very successful, and they would print, you can see on this, you see this kind of line right there, in there? They would stamp what you see printed there onto the tray, and then some of that would be gold leafed. And they would round the edges here underneath.
They were rolled over a
Rolled
wire.
over, yeah, right.
And these are some of the Greenwich trays that
Right
here.
here. And they're very valuable today, and they're called Greenwich trays, so if you find one, get it. Especially if it's cheap. I bought one time, she had it for sale, it was big too, for $15. And I said, is this $150? And she went, no. And I'm thinking, what direction is it going? And she said, it's $15. And I said, do you know what this is? Yes, it's a tray. Fair enough.
Here's mine.
I almost wet my pants getting out of it. I thought I was gonna, she was gonna catch me.
Interesting story though about the American Tea Tray Works. The demise of this was in 1851. One of the owners and one of the backers of this building was also the president of the People's Bank in Greenwich. There were some questions at one time about 1851 about improprieties at the bank. The bank examiners came and were starting to investigate in the books. The president of the bank went home to his house down on Church Street, decided to go with a rope out to the back garage, hung the rope over the beam and hung himself. So not only was it the demise of the bank president, it was the demise of the People's Bank in Greenwich, and it was the demise of the American Tea Tray Works. So euphemistically, when I was reading some of the history, they referred to this as the financial decline in Greenwich.
There was another one after that.
Now you know the rest of the story.
Right.
So that's what happened to the American Tea Tray Works.
This is looking down on the Battenkill River. Here's the bridge that goes across in Center Falls, and here's the Blandy Paper Mill. I'm sorry,
Yep.
Ellsworth and Bose.
Yep, this is Route 29.
And that's Route 29.
Yeah.
This is a great story. This is about Sandy Saves the Day. This is kind of grainy because it came out of a newspaper.
There's Sandy right
There's
there. You can
Sandy.
see.
Sandy was a puppy, according to the story. Well, what happened was it's January and the river is frozen, but it isn't frozen enough to be able to walk across it. And they had to get an electric cable across so they could get electric to the other side. And they couldn't walk across it because the ice was too thin. And they couldn't take a boat because it was too thick. So somebody got the wild idea, get a dog. So they got this puppy and they tied a rope,
Yeah, clothesline.
clothesline to the dog's collar, and the owner went to the other side, called the dog. The dog lived, okay, didn't crash through the ice, got to the other side, and the dog saved the day.
They then took the rope and then attached the cord that they needed, the electrical line,
And
to the
pulled it
clothesline,
across.
Pulled it across. So
Right.
there is Sandy in his place of honor
Right.
on the fender of
And here's all
ours.
the guys happy that they got this accomplished. This was in 1947.
Quite ingenious.
Yeah.
Probably knew he'd done something.
I
I'm
bet.
glad the dog survived.
Pretty for a dog.
Yeah, so that's- This was the Phoenix Paper Company in Battenville. Okay, so you know where the old bridge is, you go across the old...
This was originally the McLean Mill and then Daniel Anthony, Susan B. Anthony's father.
Ran that before the crash of 1837 that I told you about. And this is so grown up and destroyed now that you can't even get a picture of it.
There it is.
This is from the other side
Right.
of it, because we couldn't get a picture from the river of that, but this is what it looks like today. That was finally taken out of production
In the
when it was,
1970s.
yeah, 1970, because it was, or thereabouts, because it was really polluting the river. In fact, I was a lifeguard, I'll tell the story. I was a lifeguard in 1969, okay, and I would get down there one day, and the river is just,
This is
all
the
this-
Greenwich Beach.
the Greenwich Beach, the river's just filled with like, bleh, crud going down. And we were told, keep everybody out of the water. Okay, so phone calls were made, and the people that owned, it was biotech at the time, lived in Perth Amboy, and it took them about 4 hours to drive up, which they did. Now there's like 3 semi-naked teenagers, myself being one, and these guys in suits, looking at them. They all get out of their car and they look. More phone calls were made, and pretty soon a truck shows up with a lot of hay, and they go, you lifeguards, come here. Let's get this stuff, let's get a rope again across the river, and let's tie the hay to it, and that's gonna sop up the oil, or whatever it is. That was their environmental impact study. Right. Well, we took a boat. We were not stupid. We
Okay.
took a boat and did that. So, fast forward, many years later, Barton and I are interviewing Sally Teft about this. Why? Because we couldn't find anything about it anywhere in the Greenwich Journal, in any archives, anywhere about this spill. And we said to Sally, why wasn't it at least in the paper? And she says, it must have happened on a Wednesday. Okay, what does that have to do with anything? She goes, well, we would have been putting the paper to bed and would have missed that editorial section. So
And it would have been old news by the next week.
So it did, so not everything that happens becomes the history that we read.
Not in a local weekly.
Not in the local weeklies anyway. So anyway, so much for the Dunbarton, not the Dunbarton.
That was
Biotech. Here's another,
This mill has undergone a great many transformations in its lifetime. This is the Rexley Mill, and what is left of it is probably about this part right here.
yeah, I think it's missing this top part. Yeah,
But at one time it was
the marble mill,
Marble mill.
cut marble.
They cut marble tombstones there. They had marble that was shipped down from Vermont, from Rutland, the Dorset area, down to Rexley, where they sawed it into 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch thick slabs that were made into tombstones. And then, of course, the railroad runs right here.
Right.
Very handy. They would load them on the railroad and ship them to parts south and eventually west. And this picture is when it was the Bartlett All Steel Side Company. And they had a very important contract with the U.S. Army during World War I, and also with the Tsar of Russia during World War I, for scythes and sickles
And machetes,
and machetes.
of which is one back there.
Right. So I'm wondering whether the side that's on the Russian flag could be one of the for sickles.
This is a watercolor that, of that building as it is today.
Not much left.
Not much left.
Now this is a picture from Shushan. Does anybody know where this is? It's right by, this is Edie Meagle's house up on the Jackson side of Shushan, if you know Edie. That's her house. This was at one time the Lovejoy house. This is the Lovejoy Tin Factory here on the Jackson side. The river, of course, runs between these buildings.
You know what's great? When they took pictures back then, everybody got in the picture. They all came out and
That's right, it's a big deal.
Look, in the windows.
With
and
the
just-
windows.
Yeah, horses are in it.
This is Kaiser's shirt factory here, which at one time employed 125 women and men. And I'm wondering what, it looks like they might be packing cases here or something in this wagon, whether they packed the shirts in there and then got them to the railroad and shipped them to probably Troy to pick up their collars and on to New York maybe. But there's a very well-dressed man in the cart there, which I wonder if that might not be Mr. Kaiser. in this wagon.
So is that building gone or?
Yes, that's just about where the Covered Bridge Museum
Yes.
is now.
Right.
It's down kind of over the route, what is that,
Oh.
64?
The foundation is still there.
That's right.
In fact, it may have been sold yesterday in a pack sale.
Oh, really? It's about where that little one-room schoolhouse is.
Yes, right across from that.
You know what is interesting when we've looked at a lot of these historic photographs is there really weren't a lot of trees. Most of those trees have been cut down and they were now houses. And so when you look into the environment, we have a photograph of 1906 from, it was then the Blandy paper mill looking towards Salem. It's all fields. There aren't any trees at all, none. Yeah,
Of course, there was a lot of sheep grazing.
a lot of
Yeah,
sheep grazing.
Like
Yeah.
250,000 sheep, is that correct? There were over 250,000 sheep grazing in Washington County at one time, so that was a lot
I
of
think it was
cleared
even higher
land.
than that, actually. But
Very
anyway,
well be.
for the
I
most part.
think they cut a lot for fuel.
Yes.
Yes,
And for
yeah,
lumber.
they used it, yeah. Yep.
This is the Eagleville Mill, which is no longer there, of course, but this is near where the Eagleville Covered Bridge is, and it would be on the Salem side of the river. It was a blanket factory for many, many years. It operated for, I believe, 100 years.
There is a blanket in the other room that you can see that was made there.
They made not only blankets, they made backing for linoleum, and it was a successful operation, as I say, for nearly 100 years. And I think it was burned in the 1980s. The building had got quite decrepit. Here it is. I think this was in the 1980s. And the owners of the property were worried about liability. Kids were getting in there and
So they burned it.
So they burned it.
This is a great picture. This is actually a postcard. And somebody writes on the back of it, it's April. Which, I don't know if that was April, but it was like that last year, wasn't it? Anyway, they were cutting ice. And she writes that, she's waiting for spring to come. Yeah, but it took us a while to figure out what they were, at first, what were they doing? I said, oh, they were cutting ice. So they had the horses and they had this barge.
This is some type of a device that would drag it.
Yeah, that would drag it, yeah, yeah. But there's a guy in the background, way in the background, so they were pioneers.
This is the Studebaker factory. It was actually an assembly factory in Salem, right near the railroad tracks in Salem as you go out very towards West Hebron.
The building's still there.
Yep, this part of the building is still there.
Really?
Wow.
Yep. And I don't know if you can tell, but there's a cart being hoisted down, I think. I think it's being let down from the second story where they probably assembled the wagons. But all the component parts were brought there to Salem on the railroad, and then they assembled these wagons, which were very sturdily built, good old Studebaker
And
barn wagons.
they became more popular because Grant, didn't he have one of these?
Ulysses
Everybody
Grant had a
wanted-
Landau,
Right.
which they produced.
So everybody wanted one.
Not in Salem.
Oh, so they had other factories. That's
Right.
Yes, they
Right.
had several factories around. This is actually an ad for the Frank Wright Studebaker factory in Salem. And that would be one of the fancy parts. That's the building as it is today. So if you know that, on Route
So
30,
just as you're past,
the railroad tracks.
just as you're going out of
Storage
town.
unit,
Saw,
Storage unit.
across from Saw.
Go back one.
It's across from
Could you
Saw.
go back one again?
Go back,
Look
go
at the
back.
ad? Thank you.
Judy, that building was a church, which was torn down and moved to that location.
Oh, really? You know what denomination that would be, Bruce?
Well, I know Al may know, he's
With
Allen.
Methodist.
Was it
Methodist.
Methodist Church?
from another community.
Oh, really?
From what they call Porter. Nobody ever knows where Porter is.
Porter is.
Porter
It
is on
was.
Route 22 going to Granville, and there's a little sign that says
I've
Porter.
seen that. I wondered what that
It was a
would
little,
be.
it was a little hamlet, but that was the church that was there.
Okay. So
That's
they
why the
brought it all the way
windows
down
look
Route
that way.
22 and put it
Yeah.
here. It does look church-like.
It does.
It does.
This today is the American Hardware store on Church Street. Kyle Hunter and Dave Linendahl own this hardware store in Granville, as
And
well
it
as the one in
looks
Salem.
almost the same, this is upstairs, except that, well, that table is still there.
Table
Make a
is
heck
still
of a
there.
picnic table. But they provided, the people who worked here in Granville, when they first located there wasn't any running water. They didn't have any running water where they lived. So they would take showers here. They had showers and a place to wash up, and I don't know if they cleaned their clothes there or not, but this was
One of the fringe
full
benefits.
service, a fringe benefit of working there.
And they
Yeah.
had social, they had dances there, they had potluck suppers. They really had a lot of fringe benefits for their job.
Yeah, it was it was a really community kind of, process that they had there? Yeah.
And the ladies, you can see how, again, it was before the 1920s in that picture because they have their hair all up on top of their head. It was before bobbed hair, so you could tell it's, 1913. And that's a stack of gloves that you can see on the table next to this woman here, which actually required quite precise sewing.
Yeah, there's a pair of gloves out there that you can actually see in the other room that's on exhibit, if you want to see what it looked like, and some lingerie.
Lingerie, because later on it became a lingerie factory. It also was at one time a men's shirt factory, and then finally it has transformed into a hardware store.
Yeah, and now it's a storage unit upstairs. But you can go up there, if you go in and ask, they'll probably, they let us up.
They let us up.
Yeah, they did. This is the only other operating factory in Washington County from that time. This is the telescope factory when they were building it.
In 1921.
Yeah, and again, I love seeing all the people just
OSHA
standing around.
was not in
No.
evidence.
Right. Right. But you can also look back here and see the landscape.
Totally
You can
clear.
see it totally clear.
You can see the church steeples way
Yeah,
in
sure,
it.
yep.
But again, Mr. Vanderminden, who was Henry Vanderminden, was the founder of this company, and the family still operates today. The Vanderminden family operates Telescope.
There is a
And
telescope cot in that other room you can take a look at.
that's actually a salesman's sample.
Yeah. Don't sit on it. Please
And
don't sit.
I always was curious about the name telescope, and what that comes from was they had invented the telescoping leg on cots, so that the legs would telescope in so that you could collapse them flat, and then once you got them where you wanted, you could adjust them by telescoping the leg out and then locking it into place. Hence the name telescope.
This is the Brickyard in Granville. Where did we decide that was?
This is in Middle Granville, and it's right on the river, and also on the railroad and the river and the red clay were all together in one place. So it was a perfect spot to have a brickyard. And Mr. Pepper started the brickyard in the late 1800s, and it operated for about 75 years. And as you can see here, these are all laid out in molds. They were not fired bricks. They were adobe bricks. So they were laid out in the sun to dry.
Once we're done using them, you can put them back and you can
we
pick
found
them
a
up.
new use for
Yeah, we
these.
found a new use for
For these
bricks.
artifacts, it's holding up the AV system here. Of course, they wouldn't be used for house construction because they were some type of an adobe, but they probably were shipped to parts south and west.
Some people think they might have used it on the inner construction.
It could be, maybe
Yeah,
for
on the
insulation.
inner
A lot of old houses.
I love this photograph. I counted 52 people in there with a
Again, no
magnifying
OSHA.
glass.
Right.
Yeah. And there's one guy in that cart he's the only one with a suit on, so he probably was the owner. This is the Granville Switch Quarry, where train tracks came in there and they would switch so you could load it from one train to another.
Is that winter time with snow?
No, I think that's all just stone.
I think that's just all stone. Yeah, it's just an old photograph.
Oh, yeah, okay, the cuttings are just laying around.
Here's some of those guys on.
Guys.
We found several of these same people in other photographs. We must have had quite a photo shoot that day. And, because they were kind of goofing around, I thought. I mean, they had, they were like doing stuff to each other. They were fun. They looked like, look at this guy. Look at him, it was hanging out of his mouth. A pipe, yeah.
It's pipe.
But look at them, they're pretty dressed up. Look at this guy, he's got a tie on.
Yeah.
And
I
a
think he
cord.
probably was the
Owner,
owner.
the owner, you think? I don't know.
The other guys don't have ties.
Well, he's got a chisel in his, or a hammer in his hand.
I think he's trying to show these splitting
Oh.
pieces of slate there
Oh,
with a
okay.
chisel.
Anyway, they all look happy.
They're taking a break.
Photo taken.
This is Granville, Middle Granville, New York. I love some of these old lithographs that you can see, because it shows what it looked like. But this is the Medowee River going through.
And you can see, this is actually, Middle Granville was probably the same size as Granville at one time. There was a lot of industry in Middle Granville.
And not too many trees out in the
No.
country. Okay.
But you see some of the quarry poles, you see this quarry pole right there? So there's a quarry right close to the river.
Do they call those quarry sticks?
Sticks, quarry
Sticks.
What's that?
That's how they would hoist the stone up out of the quarry. It would be like I suppose a block and tackle type of situation where they were just hoisting the stone up out of the quarry as it was cut.
Yeah, that's the last one. That's it. Butch, do you have a question? You want to come up here? Come up here.
Oh, I can.
No, he wants to go. Okay. All right.
You mentioned that there was, at one time, maybe 125 people employed at the Rexley Mill. Any other town that had a mill that has that, there was always row houses and mill houses for people. Where do you think all the employees lived?
I think there were a lot of more houses in Rexley than there are today. In some of the pictures, you can see 15, 20 houses down along the mill.
Oh.
And I don't know if they were maybe not such good construction, maybe they've been destroyed over the years, maybe they were moved, because there were camps, I know, along the river, so maybe some of them were moved out of there. But there was mill housing there at one time.
Okay, yes.
This really doesn't have to do with the mill. I'm just curious when Union Village became Greenwich and
It
why.
was after the Civil War. I think maybe it was politically incorrect to call yourself a union at
No,
that
it wasn't.
time.
No, not at all. It was because of the
Okay.
post office.
For the post
Because of
office.
the post office, if they wanted to have the same name as the town.
Ah,
So
so it wasn't,
nobody
had,
would change it.
I always thought maybe it had to do with union, thinking they didn't like the name union
It was
anymore.
the Civil War, meant we are Northwood.
And personally, I like the name Union Village, and when I had my store for 20 years, I named it Union Village because I liked that
So
name.
the town was Greenwich? That there was the township of Greenwich?
Yes, that's right.
And was it always called Greenwich and not Greenwich?
It was always called Greenwich, not Greenwich. And it was, before it was Union Village, it was named after one of the early founders. who was
Whipple City.
Mr. Whipple.
Joe Whipple.
John Stevens family.
So they have Whipple City Days now,
Yeah.
and that's of the first founder. And the name Greenwich comes from East Greenwich, Rhode Island, because some of the settlers from East Greenwich, Rhode Island, and that's how they pronounce it there, came to Greenwich and settled.
Does it go back to Europe as well, to England?
Yes.
But tell them why it's Greenwich and not Greenwich.
Yeah, but that's American pronunciation.
And
Probably.
does the word itself have a meaning?
It's a green town, which.
You sure?
Which is a, which and Rick mean a district or a place. Bailiwick is a district that's ruled by a bailiff.
But tell them why
By
the
bailiff, but
pronunciation.
But Greenwich, Greenwich just down the river from London. As far as I know, the reason that they changed the pronunciation was that they had two German kings there, George I and his son wasn't a whole lot better. And when George I said, well, we go down the Thames to Greenwich, instead of saying down the Thames to Greenwich, nobody in the court wanted to correct him. So after a while, that pronunciation stuck.
bet there's more to it than that, though.
Maybe.
Now, does
You can
Wick
look it up.
have a Dutch root?
Wick is Anglo-Saxon.
Any other comments?
You've done a great job.
Oh,
Thank you.
thank you.